Hi again, everyone. I'm Nick Caniglio.
And I'm Marnie Stockman. And this is the Lead It Like Lasso podcast, a Ted Lasso rewatch podcast. We are the authors of Lead It Like Lasso, a leadership book for life, your life.
Yeah, and as you know, this podcast it's an extension of many of the elements outlined in our book. We invite you to join us as we take a deep dive into each episode and explore the leadership principles as they play out in the series. And for today's episode, we're diving into season 3, episode 7, The Strings That Bind Us.
You know it's Roy's favorite.
This is a good one. This is a good one. I think it's funny. I think there's a lot in this episode. I think the first time I watched it, I wasn't really feeling a lot of the leadership insights. But as I watched it again, I was like, yeah, there's a lot in this one. So you want to talk real quick about just a recap of the episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So AFC Richmond all in on total football, which Ted thought he dreamed up originally.
Yeah. Nate, we're starting to see a little transformation in Nate, and he takes a chance on love with Jade.
Yeah, there we go. Keeley, speaking of love, is getting a bit of love bombing by Jack.
Yeah, and Sam takes a stand, a political stand, and we find out quickly that he has a team that's ready to support him.
Yes. Oh, gives all the good feels at the end there. Hey, friends, before we get back to the episode, can we brag for just a sec?
Yep, because our next book, The Business of You, is officially out in the world, and we think you're going to love it.
It is everything we believe about personal leadership, purpose, and owning your path, wrapped in one part fable, one part field guide, 0 corporate buzzwords.
Yep, and we wrote it for students, including their parents, professionals, pivoteers, basically anyone who's ever asked, what am I even doing with my life? Spoiler, more than you think.
So if you're ready to start treating your life like your most important project, we've got your blueprint.
Grab your copy of The Business of You wherever books are sold, or head to thebusinessofyou.ai to learn more.
Okay, back to the episode.
Did you have a place you wanted to start, or do you want me to go first?
Well, yeah, why don't you start?
Okay.
Surprise.
Surprise. Yeah, so I'm going to go to near the end where Trent is walking in with Ted, and he says, it's going to work, Ted. It's going to work. Over the past 3 years, you've built out this trust and support, and it reaches one inevitable conclusion, I think is what he said. And it's the Lasso Way. It has to work. And I know we've talked about trust on some previous episodes, but I think it's a great episode. I mean, there's trust with strings, there's trust with swapping places. There's a lot of trust out there. But I guess my question for you is, do you think that trust is really the most important thing in terms of making room for transformation? Because this episode was all about transformation.
It definitely was. As a matter of fact, one of the first pieces I have written down was change management. I do think trust is key, and with the caveat that you have to know yourself first before you can even set yourself up to trust others or to be trusted. But in terms of if it's more than party of one, trust, critical element. And what's interesting is this is the string that binds us. And I definitely did not catch this the first time. There were 2 things I didn't catch the first time. One, the episode starts with Jamie running, training, and he is pulling a bike, and Roy is balanced on the bike. And yeah, you know what? You got to have a lot of trust to do that. And then the other thing that I didn't catch the first time around, I don't think, was Trent using the phrase the Lasso Way, which we know comes later. So yes, I will say trust. Key, how about you? Were you thinking there was a different answer?
No, I absolutely. I think trust is 100% critical, but it made me think just the way that Trent phrased that, over the past 3 years, you've built this culture of trust and support.
With, what did he say? Like small little, almost
He
indistinguishable pieces. He used
he said
some of
that in
them.
an earlier episode, right? I don't remember
Yeah.
if he said it in this particular episode, but I the one thing that came to mind is that the great leaders build systems more than just motivation and belief, because if it's just on motivation and belief alone, they're always going to end up collapsing under pressure. I think the fact that Trent recognized that, yeah, this has been a system. This Lasso Way is the
Is
system,
the
and
system. Ooh, I
it's
think that.
not going to easily collapse. And I think his recognition, it's of course a little bit of foreshadowing, right? But into the book name and everything else and where this is going to go. But it really speaks to the fact that you can't just have words. You have to build that support and structure underneath that system as a leader to make sure that when the first bad thing happens, that whatever you've built just doesn't simply
They
crumble
don't
and
give
fall
up on
down.
it. So it's
Yeah.
interesting you say that because I had not tied these two pieces together. At the beginning of my notes, fairly early on, when they're first in the team room and Ted says, we're doing total football. Trent questions it and he says it's all about taking risks, letting go of baggage, throwing all constraints away, etc. But we're doing this in the world of change management because we've certainly talked to an expert in the field that the why is critically important, but you have to have all of the other elements. And what you just said, you have to have a system in place. And I didn't catch that's what Trent was saying because they got initial pushback. Like, are we really doing this?
From
Right?
everybody. Yep.
From
Not just Trent, but
everybody.
the team as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Roy was like, we're going to practice this and in a few months we'll be ready. And Ted said, no, we're doing it Saturday. So I think that, again, the writer's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
That is key. And that the system is what Trent was speaking to. The Lasso Way is the system. It's not just the why, it's the system.
Yep. Excellent. Your turn.
Well, I was going to jump to the change management piece, but let's just talk about the three things that he mentioned with total football. It's about taking risks, letting go of baggage, and throwing all constraints away. In terms of leadership, what comes to mind there that doesn't just work in total football, but in running a team or a company or a household?
Well, I think all of it. I think all of it comes to play, and I think that again the show really reinforces that in several, like the first one you just mentioned, taking risks. We see that with the Nate
Oh,
storyline
big time.
as well. Um, we see that to some extent with Sam taking a risk, really portraying and amplifying his voice on an issue that ends up, I think we end up seeing. We talk a lot about what are your non-negotiables in terms of core values, and we found out what some of Sam's non-negotiables are in terms of core values, and taking that risk is really important that we can learn as leaders, right? It requires courage. And I'm gonna go off the rails a little bit here because I think you have a better answer to your own question. But it made me think because I related it to Nate's notion of taking a risk in asking out Jade. And we go through this wonderful moment with Nate, understanding how his mom and his dad got together, and then, all the, the, the questioning that he was doing. How do I know when someone likes me as
You
compared
don't.
to
Yeah.
just being nice to me? Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't. Even Siri knows that. Um, but it made me think of, one of the most courageous acts of leadership, I think, talking about taking risks, is actually asking for connection with somebody else. And I know early on in my career that that may seem absolutely obvious to everybody listening to it, but that was very hard for me. And I can't tell you why. I'm sure it has to do something with rejection. Just in general, asking for connection with somebody else whether it's for a date or whether you're building the connection, which is so important in a team environment, and especially as a leader. Sometimes you feel like you might be rejected in that regard. And I think we saw that through this whole storyline with Nate. What was he really afraid of? He was afraid that Jade was not going to be into him, right? And I think when we work within our team, I think we're afraid that we're going to be called an imposter, or that people aren't going to think that that I should be telling them how to do their work, or all these things start to pop up in our mind in terms of, oh my gosh, I'm going to get rejected somehow, some way. And I think taking a risk and being courageous is something that you just have to accept. It's table stakes if you're going to take on any role in leadership. And I think what we've talked about in the past is everyone's a leader. You don't have a choice
Yeah.
but to not take that risk.
Yeah, you're not going
And
to grow if you don't take a chance.
yeah, and I think the sooner you realize that, you realize that, okay, yeah, I need to do this. I need to create my connections. I need to take risks on different things. And we talk all the time that failure should be viewed as feedback. Um, and the reality of it is, the more you practice at it, the more you take risks, the better you become. So that was a long-winded tangent to your question. I don't remember what it was. So enlighten us with something that our listeners really want to hear.
No, no, that was perfect because it was we started total football and taking risks. It's
Yeah.
interesting because I had wanted to talk about Nate with his. I don't if for any parents of young children out there, if you give a mouse a cookie, right? If you give a mouse a cookie, he's gonna do this, and by the end, you're sitting in a movie with popcorn or something. I don't remember
Yeah.
all of the things. Nate goes down that rabbit hole or mouse hole in this case, right? Well, if I ask and she says no, I'll be rejected and I can never go to Taste of Athens again. And then when we have a family, like it's blah, 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 that's what
Yeah.
piles up in your mind. And it reminded me of when we wrote the newsletter about having a pre-mortem. And we actually just talked about this last week. To think for yourself, if this is going to go badly, what's the worst case scenario and what can you do to avoid it? And, for Nate, for asking someone out, as both his mother and sister said, you can't know. You just have to take the risk and do.
Yeah.
And same thing when Jade isn't right there. How do I know if she's going to stand me up? You don't know. You're just going to show up. But I think the taking risk piece, everything you said, brilliant and critically important.
Yeah, no doubt.
What did you have next on your list?
I really liked the scene when they were talking about when they were swapping roles.
Oh,
Right.
yes. Yes.
That was adaptability, I think, or that's not the right. There was conditioning, versatility. Versatility is what we're talking
Conditioning,
about.
versatility, and awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, um, and Isaac or Danny was going to take the corner kick, and Ted's like, nope, 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 you're not taking the corner kick. Remember, you swapped with Isaac, and Isaac's like, I've never taken a corner kick before. And Ted goes into this, hey, you've always been told since you were 11 years old with your beard and your growl, you've been told you're a center back. You've been put in a box. And he said, well, today that box ceases to exist. And I think, wow, that is, what a way to say that, and because we're so often putting either ourselves into our box or having others put us into a box because of past labels, because of stereotypes, because of anything really. And to take a pause and to take a step back and say, what if I extend out beyond this box a little bit?
Yeah.
How
And
might
grow
I
a little.
change? How might I grow? So I really like that messaging. And I really like the fact that Ted, as a leader, gives his people permission to explore other strengths. I think that's a great lesson for all of us.
Along those same lines, I love that the fans came to the
Yep.
practices, and as he said to Beard, like, It's their team. We just get to borrow it for a little bit. But when they switched places as fans, and the one guy was suddenly nice, and then the
Yeah.
other guy cussed, he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I don't like that. I want to be me." Right? Like, okay. He took a chance and then said, "Nope, that is not the authentic version of me." But I thought that was a great scene to sort of highlight that as well.
Yeah. It reminded me in our book, Lead It Like Lasso, we talk about the importance of when you're in a leadership position, engaging with all the different stakeholders that you can identify. And a lot of people don't think of like the outside world as a stakeholder. And sure, it may be a little different, as a soccer club, but in reality, they're most of our worlds have an outside world on some tangential basis. And the fact that Ted recognizes that and has found a way to communicate with them through basically letting them in to the sausage making of some extent. Uh, I think I think that's another important lesson with having them come in and making them feel like they're part of the team. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And I loved how every single scene when they went back to practice, there were more people and more
Yep.
people and more people because that's the flywheel effect. When you get people involved and the more people involved, they want to connect and you know, you tell two friends and they'll tell two friends, that type of thing.
Yep. What you got next?
What do I have next? First, as an aside, boy, do I love Nate's boxes that he makes. I think that is just delightful.
Just
Um,
don't trip as you're walking across the road
yes, there
while a
you
bus is
go.
coming.
Um, so Sam's dad,
Hola.
Yola, you don't, if you really want to piss them off, you forgive them,
Yeah.
right? Um, you don't do it for them, you do it for yourself. You follow your
Yep.
heart. Anger weakens. Don't fight back, fight forward, which has always been one of our favorite quotes.
Yeah.
And I know that you've talked about that when you had an employee that poached your largest client and left the company, right?
Yep.
And it was about not fighting back, but fighting forward. And kind of what does this situation need, which is exactly what Jamie says, when they go to fix the restaurant. So, what did you think with, I know you like Ola yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I a, a couple of things, right? I think it's worth restating. Fighting forward, it's not about fighting opponents. And I think again, this episode demonstrates that. It's more about, I don't know, fortifying the people who need you. And I think, in taking care of those, because at the end of the day, that's going to work out better for you. And I clearly in this day and age, that's such an important thing to keep in mind. And I'm here to say, like we've talked about, we're not going to rehash it again, but as you stated, that when somebody pushed our clients, it felt life impacting, or like our livelihoods were in jeopardy, because it was such a significant part of our business. And we resisted really the urge to fight the opponents, the people that actually did it, and instead took care of our own house after much consternation. And I'm here to tell you, it worked out better than I think it ever could have worked out. Um, and I think just some common things to keep in mind, right? Bitterness is reactive, whereas purpose is more proactive. And I think always choosing to move forward um, is is a real important thing to keep in the back of your mind.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else did you have?
Um, so there's the whole storyline with Jack and Keely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it made me think about a couple. First of all, there's some foreshadowing with this, right? Sometimes shiny things might end up having tarnish. I think Rebecca gives us a great reminder when she talks about identifying red flags. You need to really look out for those sometimes. um, but what it got me thinking about more than anything is, and I don't know the answer to this question, but um, is generosity always a gift, or
Mm,
sometimes is it used to disguise uh,
manipulation.
manipulation and control?
In this case, I think it was control more than manipulation, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably a pessimistic view of things, but I think we need to be realists as well. And I think there is there's been more than one occasion, I feel like, in my life where there's been strings attached, no pun intended with this episode name here,
Nice.
with generosity, and um, sometimes you're not always looking out for it, and you got to be careful with that.
Well, that's interesting because in the string piece of this, the whole point of them attaching the strings is that um, if you can feel the string attached, it's not a good thing, right? But if you can
Mm.
get in the flow where there's basically, it's not
Oh,
like there's a string
yeah.
attached.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. The other thing I think, just to be, and this is much more so you than me, but I maybe see it from the other end, which is sometimes uh, you are inhibiting others by always giving, right? I think givers out there um, may not realize that they have to open themselves up to allow themselves to receive.
Yeah.
When that might be their core value, that they are a giver. Um, Sometimes it's intimidating to other people to provide for that person, and I think as a giver, those of you out there, you should keep that in mind, that sometimes you got to open the door to allow others to give something to you.
Well, guilty as charged. I can even remember writing a LinkedIn post about like, okay, all of us go givers out there need to be go receivers as well. Remember Nigel when,
Yeah.
somebody that had did us a huge favor when we first started our software company had a much larger audience than we did by massive scales, and
Hmm.
took the time to write the foreword of the book that we had done for the IT space, and then sent all kinds of swag and all these things. And I thought, I felt very behind. Like I can't out nice him. I don't know
Yeah.
what to do. So you're right. It is. And that takes some humility, which I don't know that people would necessarily think that, but yeah, you need to be on the receiving end, uh,
Yep.
a gracious receiver in addition
Yes.
to a gracious giver.
And it's as much for other people as it is for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's remember we had Rocky on our other podcast a bit ago, and he said that lesson of like, I know you can carry in all those water bottles, but my mother has taught me that like you don't let a lady carry in all those heavy water bottles. So you're gonna let me take these. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Absolutely.
um I want to jump back to Nate and Jade for just a second.
Yeah.
When Nate almost chickens out and he goes into the restroom,
What did you think
he
he was going to do?
stares in the mirror. And I thought, oh, gross. Does he spit to get up the nerve to ask her out on a date? And he doesn't. And that, I think, is the sign to us that the Nate is coming around, and he goes home and he makes a box.
I wrote that down as well. I was waiting for it, waiting for the disgusting fit, and it didn't happen. I got to admit, I smiled. I've got to admit, I'm going to risk losing viewers right now, but I relate to Nate in some way or form, and I root for him to find his way
One, it's
100%.
nice because now we
Yeah.
know we saw a pivot. So
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Did you did we go through your list? Did you have anything else?
the only other thing, let me see. Oh, well, first, just as a funny aside, when Ted is doing the his whole thing about how he came up with the mustache and the blue collar comedy tour and sharp dressed men, and he had several puns, and Roy noted the puns. He's like, "Oh, I hate it when you make me do that."
Hate it.
Like, this is
Can't believe I
what
just said that.
this is his sign that that Trent's right. The Lasso
Yeah.
Way is working. I also thought it was interesting that sacrifice is not number 4. Ted doesn't know what it is,
Yep.
but he's like, "Nope, that's not it." Moves on.
He knows what it's not.
He knows what it's not. Love that when Jamie said, "Can I say something?" and he looks around and they all flip him off in like, "All right, we love you for who you are, Jamie. Don't play to me, play through me." I think is brilliant. We in business talk about the bottleneck's always at the top of the bottle, right? So that when you force everything in kind of a controlling way, I guess that's a bit of what he was saying. If we're forcing everything to go to him, then he can't open it up for others. But to play through him is a whole different world. I think that is a brilliant thought for how to bring total football into business.
That's awesome. That's brilliant. Love that.
And the last thing that I had was when Sam asked, "Why did you all come to fix the restaurant?" And Jamie gives a total football line that Ted had used, is that we stopped and thought, what does this situation need? And it needs us. And many times I've sat in a meeting and said, okay, we've admired that problem enough. And now it's time to figure out what the situation needs to solve the problem. And so I love that.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end this. So, as you know, that is our whistle. The game's over, but leadership lessons keep playing.
And you can find us here, there, and everywhere at leaditlikelasso.com, or we are at Lead It Like Lasso on all the socials. We would love for you to like, comment, subscribe, share, all the things that the algorithms love. And so do we.
Yep. So until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep leading it like Lasso.